We are an oppressed nation of people. And that is the thing that has to be won also in the conscience of African people. Now, this is not a far-fetched position or statement that I am making. I'm reading now a really good book, a novel, Mwamba. I gave Mwamba this novel. That he wouldn't read. I think it's called A Given Day. And the writer is a guy out of Boston. Out of Boston. And who also lives in St. Petersburg part of the time. Great book. He's the guy who wrote the book about, what's the name of the book that Sean Penn and somebody else played? Mystic River, right? And the novel, I like the book. It's the first white writer I've ever seen that treated African characters with such dignity. And in the book, he talks about this African character who, this was in the 1920s, right? Who meets, he talks about Garvey. He raises the issue. He mentions Marcus Garvey in the book, and he talks about Du Bois and black people who were engaged in struggle, like for civil rights and things like that. I was impressed with that writer's ability to even address those kinds of questions and have the African characters have as much dignity as they did, but it was one that also recognized, like, African people, the treatment of African people, and the right to resist. And the fact is that Comrade Diop, made a point about how the U.S. government commits crimes against us, and how the police, Mwamba talks about, commit crimes against us. But crime is a legal term. It's a legal term. And the state legalizes itself. The state legalizes itself. They're not committing crimes. They are functioning as the bourgeois colonial state against us. When they beat up Mamiya's brother, when they put Mamiya in prison, when they beat the guys, like in our communities, they are not. Now, sometimes they do commit crimes, when in the sense that they violate the law of the bourgeoisie. The police become increasingly corrupted by the drugs on the streets, right? So much drugs on the street, drug money on the street, you just buy your cops. Buy cops. Cops themselves become pushers and things like that. That becomes problematic. You see all kinds of issues, emerge, and struggles against crime and corruption in the police department, and then they clean that up, right? And now you don't find as much of that kind of crime, because this crime the drug problem is concentrated in pill distribution, right? So you got the doctors and other folk who are getting busted for drugs, et cetera, because the drug question is still out there. But crime is a legal definition. And I just want to, as a legal term, and the state legalizes itself. And the question of resistance makes it necessary for us to understand the issue of the nation and the captive and occupied nation. That is a critical question, whose time has really come, like in this country. And again, if you deal with the issue of the nation, at the point where it becomes generally understood that that's what we're talking about, even if there's disagreement with it, then the explanation for our actions of resistance, right, achieve another character. So even if people disagree with the struggles that's happening in Afghanistan, they disagree with the resistance of the Afghan people, it is understood that that they are occupied. Even the Americans talk about there being an occupation in Afghanistan. So what has to happen is we have to pursue this question and redefine what it is that our struggle is about. That's why this whole concept of fighting against racism is so absolutely bogus, and it is contradictory, and it places impediments in the struggle that we are trying to make. That's why we say we are an oppressed and occupied nation. Therefore, the question isn't whether or not somebody is guilty or innocent for fighting back against the state. The question is free them because they are part of an occupied nation. Do you understand what I'm saying? That changes the discussion altogether. And it also explains this activity. There are certain things that define counterinsurgency. And a critical definition of part of the definition of counterinsurgency is resource and population control. That is, every counterinsurgency in the world it concentrates on the question of control of resources and population. That's why in every community you see the police in all the African communities. That's why the occupation, the throwing people into prisons like you see happening in the African community, is resource and population control is fundamental to the strategy of counterinsurgency no matter where it occurs. In Vietnam, what was it called? The program where no, not the Phoenix program, but the places where, where they would take Africans and move them, protected hamlets, and move whole populations, Vietnamese populations, and put them around barbed wire, etc., with the objective of separating them, like from the revolution. They did the same thing in Kenya. Now, in fact, some of what they learned that they did in Vietnam, they learned in Kenya. They take whole populations, and in the housing projects throughout this country, that's what you find with the fences, barbed wire fences and cops and stuff all around them. Resource population control. The reason you found police on every campus in this school campus in this country followed the concept of desegregation. Resource and population control, control of population. That's why, there was not like there were shootings and killings on the campuses that they put police there. They put them there with the so-called desegregation process because they were bringing Africans onto those campuses, and they were there to protect the white teachers and the students for the job that the teachers had to do in terms of the terrible activity that targeted African young people. And I can't say enough about the whole school system. The thing is that the fundamental contradiction that African people are confronted with in this country is that our right to self-determination has been taken away from us. And when you look at the fact that people talk about, they say, well, slavery was bad, we ended slavery, quote unquote. But the right to self-determination did not come as a consequence of that. In fact, slavery, they didn't just end what they call slavery. They ended slavery and then with another amendment made Africans citizens. Wait a minute. How in the hell can you say I'm free with one breath and then the next breath say that I am a citizen? So slavery, the end of slavery did not resolve the issue of self-determination. When there was segregation, no self-determination. Integration, no self-determination. Jim Crow, no self-determination. The fact of the matter is the recapture of self-determination has not yet occurred. So whether you call it slavery, or whether you call it Jim Crow, or integration, or segregation, the issue continues to be that African people do not have the right to self-determination, and that is what the struggle is all about. So folks say that there is a way that there are certain assumptions of what is required for nationhood. And again, this is a discussion immediately that has its origin in the advent of capitalism and the emergence of the European nation. And people have said, and this is important for us to understand because this has been a huge debate. It's been an ongoing debate for a long period of time. And the Marxists really got involved in this discussion because they had to solve certain kinds of problems in terms of making a revolutionary process throughout Europe. And Stalin came up with a certain definition of what the nation was and what were criteria for nationality. That included language, contiguous land-based, common economy, common history, culture, etc. And said, in absence, if you don't have all these things, you don't have a nation, which obviously liquidated Belgium, didn't it? You know, where people speak a couple of languages at least. You know, I think that might be true of Switzerland too. I'm not sure. You know, but that wasn't. You know, anyway, there are all these definitions, all this stuff about what it takes to make a nation. So there's a discussion about the size of the population. That there has to be enough people to constitute a nation. You just can't say it's a nation without there being a certain number of people. There has to be certainly a sense of sameness. That is obviously a kind of requirement. And what we are talking about is the African nation being a nation that is not consolidated, it's dispersed across the planet Earth. And the African people in this country are part of a dispersed African nation. And how do we know that's true? We know it's true because I said it. Because just like somebody was able to make a statement, we have Italy, now what we have to do is create Italians, and set out to do that and succeeded in doing that. The task of the African Revolution is to consolidate the African nation. That is the revolutionary, and this time we're talking about a proletarian nation. Because the truth of the matter is there is a sense of sameness among black people all around the world. Even people who call themselves different things. Africans in Haiti were upset when they saw Katrina. Africans who I knew from Ethiopia meeting in Berlin were upset about what they saw in Katrina. Why? And Africans all around the world were upset about Haiti. I mean, upset about Haiti, pissed off about Haiti, hate the Red Cross for how it's doing in Haiti, hate what Clinton is doing in Haiti, really upset about Haiti. There is a sense of sameness among black people in the world. That is just a fact. So the question is how that is understood, this sense of sameness. How the responsibility of the African Revolution and revolutionaries everywhere is to help Africans to understand that we are Africans. That is a primary identity we have, because all people have many different identities. You know that, don't you? They are Baptists, they are Muslims, they are Christians, they are Catholics, they are Masons. You know, there are all kinds of things. They are Northerners and Southerners, you know, etc. But the fundamental thing, they are Bahutu, Batutsi. You know, there are many different things. The task is to achieve a consciousness of a primary identity, which is national identity. And that is part of the task of the African Revolution. That is what the ASI is all about. It's a practical problem. It ain't no heavyweight, abstract or theoretical question. It's a practical question that we are in the process now of dealing with, in that I'm saying that APSC and that this kind of conference contributes to taking out in the world the recognition of the African nation, because consciousness is a major factor of that. Not only consciousness among the African people, because we talk about to be a part of a nation, it's not, you just can't be in the nation just because you want to be in the nation. To be a part of a nation means that one has to be accepted by the body of the nation itself. Anybody who's truthful will say that African people in this country are not accepted as a part of some kind of European nation, as a part of this thing, any more than the Mexicans who come across the border, any more than all the other so-called immigrants who they're trying to get the hell out of here. So it is a struggle for national liberation. And when we look at these questions that we're confronted with, about what's happening to young people, the stuffing Africans into prisons, the national humiliation, that gets liquidated and disguised under the questions of crime and things like this, the terrible stuff where you got stuffed into these prisons. They affect things like the birth rate of the African population. That's been defined as genocide, right? because they use the example of what happened to the Jews. It's to find the genocide. When you take a huge sector of the population and affect their ability to reproduce,